In this video, I'm going to show you how I built my set of modular city tiles. This will allow you to set up a city scene super quickly, giving you total freedom to create different layouts. They take up very little space when disassembled, but on the table, paired with a few buildings, the result is amazing.
Hey folks, welcome back to HANDCRAFTED. Today we're building something super practical and versatile for your tabletop games, modular city tiles. These are the perfect foundation for creating paved cities with dirt roads, and you can use them to set up everything, from backlit marketplaces to quiet village streets, or even a battlefield if things get messy. This design was heavily inspired by Wargames, an amazing crafter here in Spain. You can check out his work on Instagram, and I highly recommend it. He had some incredible projects. For my version, I used vinyl ties as the base, as it comes pre-cut and it's lightweighted. Also, it doesn't tend to bend as other materials like wood or foam core. This project is not as cheap as other I made in the channel, but I think the cost is reasonable for all I built. In fact, I made the entire set for under 20 euros. I also used some XPS foam for the stone details to give it that extra texture, and sand for the row sections. This is an easy project, but I will warn you, it does take a bit of patience, especially if you're making a lot of tiles. Stick around to see how I made this and how you can create layouts for your games. And for my Patreon supporters, I've included a template with exact measurements, a piece guide and layout examples to get you started. Let's dive in!
This time, I won't jump straight into crafting. For this project, it was important to do a bit of planning. I needed to decide the types of tiles I'd require and the right amount of each to meet my needs. To do this, I used Illustrator to simulate different layouts and see how flexible different sets can be. In the end, I decided to prepare a set of 16 pieces, as that fit both my needs and my table size. Now let's head to the workshop and get to work. Let's get started. First, we will need a base for our city tiles. I recommend buying something pre-cut to ensure we have perfectly square pieces. In my case, I'm using self-adhesive vinyl floor tiles. I got them on Amazon and I will leave a link in the description, but you can also find them at any hardware store. Okay, second step, cutting a lot of tiles. I'm using my hot wire cutter for this, but it's optional. You can use an utility knife, but if you're planning to make a setup as big as I am, cutting by hand will take a lot of time. I'll be using 3 tile sizes, 2x2, 2x1 and 1x1 centimeters, all of them with a ½ centimeter thickness. As you will see in the video, start by cutting strips in these dimensions. Then adjust the hot wire cutter to ½ centimeter to make slices out of multiple strips at once. For me, cutting 6 to 8 strips at a time was the sweet spot for working quickly while still keeping control over each cut. Using this method, the tiles might stick together slightly, so you can scrunch them up to separate. Or just wait until texturing to do so. I only separated the largest ones ahead of time to fit them better into my texturizing can. Keep cutting patiently until you have a bunch of each type. I didn't calculate exactly how many I'd need since I'm totally eyeballing the pattern. If I need more, I will make more, and if I have extras, they will surely come in handy for a future project. Next, to add texture and smooth out the sharp edges, I'm using the classic stone in a can method. Work in batches, shaking well, and soon all the pieces will be ready. By the way, if you'd like a deeper look into this and other form texturing methods, there's a tutorial on the channel. I highly recommend it if you want to expand your technique repertoire. Before gluing, I tested the layout I had in mind for the tiles. Once I was happy, I peeled back some paper and started sticking the tiles down. This part requires some patience. Put on some music, a podcast or a video to keep you going as you place each tile. Once all the tiles are in place, use a foil ball to go over the surface, adding extra texture. Don't worry if the edges stick out a little, we will trim them later. If everything went well, the error should only be a couple of millimeters. To reinforce everything and fill the gaps, here's what we will do. Sprinkle fine sand over the tile and use a brush to spread it, making sure it settles into the grooves between tiles. Then remove the excess sand and save it for later use. Now use a spray bottle to mist the surface with alcohol. followed by watered down PVA glue mixture. Work in small sections, as alcohol evaporates quickly. The alcohol helps reduce the surface tension of the glue mixture, allowing it to penetrate the sand fully and harden it, creating a cement-like effect. Apart from the basic pieces, there will also be 3 additional types. This way, we will be able to build streets, intersections, curves and squares. I've made several of each type, but you can create as many as you feel are necessary. For my Patreon members, there will be a small guide detailing the exact number of pieces I made, along with several layout examples you can achieve. For the edges between the stone and the road, I cut pieces measuring 3 by 1 cm, with a 3/4 cm thickness. This makes them stick out slightly from the rest of the pavement. To make the curves, simply trim the pieces as shown in the video. For the road section, remove the paper to expose the adhesive. Cover it with a layer of PVA glue and sprinkle some sand over it. After removing the excess sand, repeat the process I showed you for the basic pieces. Add sand, spread it into the cracks, then spray with alcohol and watered down PVA glue. I recommend using a parchment paper or a silicone surface to dry the pieces to avoid them sticking to your work surface. Once hardened, you will notice the piece is much less flexible and significantly sturdier. For me, 1 coat was enough, but you can always add a second if necessary. Great! Now we only have one thing left to do before painting. Trim the edges that stick out from the vinyl tile. For this, use a sharp X-Acto knife and let the tile itself guide your cuts.
Alright, before we jump into painting these tiles and bringing out all those stone textures, let me ask you for a quick favor. If you're enjoying this video so far, hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more modular terrain projects like this. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. I've got plenty more crafting tutorials and tabletop terrain builds coming your way, so stick around, you won't want to miss them. Alright, let's grab some paint and give these tiles the perfect weathered city look.
Let's prime everything with the usual mix, PVA glue and black acrylic paint. This will serve as a base color while also further hardening our tiles. You can also use Black Magic Craft coating if you had Mod Podge available. I applied a couple of layers of PVA with paint and I'm very satisfied with the result. Make sure to cover everything thoroughly, and when painting the sand, dab with the brush instead of dragging it. Dragging with too much force might pull sand grains off the surface. For the stone, start with a neutral grey overbrush. Aim to cover most of the surface, but leave the black visible in the joints and the more recessed tiles. Right after this step, which helped differentiate the pavement from the dirt roads, I couldn't resist trying out a layout to see how everything was coming together. For the road, paint the entire surface with dark brown. I used a medium-sized brush for the edges to avoid getting paint on the stone. Then finish with a larger brush off camera since doing it all with the smaller brush was taking forever. Then I forgot to record my saddle brown dry brush on the dirt, but I used my usual color pattern. If you have any doubts, you can check out my painting tutorial, where I explain step by step how to paint this kind of texture. Now, to add some variety to the stonework, select a couple of colors. In my case, I choose 2 different browns. With this, paint individual stones in somewhat random pattern. Don't worry if the colors look overly saturated right now. We will tone them down later using some ink washes. Great, we're making an excellent progress. This part can be a bit slow, but trust me, it's worth the effort for achieving a realistic result. Once I finished, it was time for the black ink wash. I diluted black paint in water and, following a Carl's tip from Carl Makes Stuff, used alcohol instead of soap to reduce surface tension and help the ink flow better into the cracks and joints. This worked wonderfully, toning down the saturation of the individual painted stones and unifying the colors. After all the tiles had dried, I returned to the grey overbrush. This time, however, I only applied to certain tiles areas to create slight tone variations. Now it's time to enrich our undertones. For this, I prepared 4 inks, which I applied using 2 brushes, wet blending them together as I painted to create gradients and greater color depth. Don't worry about ruining your tiles. Once dry, the effect will be much subtler. With the inks completely dry, finish with a very light white dry brush to highlight the edges and stone textures. Finally, complete the road section with a foam dry brush to accentuate the dirt texture, and the project will be done. So now I think it's time for some cool shots.
And there we have it! Our modular city tiles are ready to hit the tabletop. Paved streets and dirt roads. These tiles are versatile base for any urban setting. They are easy to store, quick to rearrange, and bring so much life to your game. Whether you're setting up a peaceful market square or preparing for an epic city siege, these tiles have got you covered. And again, a big shout out to Wargames for the original design inspiration. Go check out his work on Instagram if you haven't already. And if you want to recreate this project, I've added a template on my Patreon, with all the measurements, piece guides, and even some example layouts to get you started. It's a great way to save time on planning your build. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and let me know what modular terrain ideas you'd like to see next. As always, stay creative, keep crafting, and I will see you in the next one.